Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. Wanted to talk a little bit about these private mining pools for Bitcoin. It seems to be in the beta process right now, but this really got me thinking about what the possibilities of Bitcoin are for the future. Because if you think about this, these private mining pools, they can disregard particular wallets. Like if they find a wallet to be nefarious, they can say, I'm not going to do this transaction, and the mining pool will do other transactions, but not the bad ones, or the ones that they deem are bad, whatever that's, if they link to terrorist organizations or drug deals or whatever, they can just exclude those from the mining pool. Now, I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, so these particular miners, can exclude certain wallets from the transactions that they are about ready to mine. Now, if you're not familiar with how Bitcoin works, I'm going to try and explain it really simply, is that when you put a transaction in with a Bitcoin, like I'm going to send some Bitcoin over to my buddy's wallet, miners grab a hold of that transaction. They go to work on a really complicated mathematical problem. When they solve that and are awarded the ability to put that block onto the ledger, which will then update the ledger, and everybody's wallets will then show that transaction along with all the rest of them. Does that make sense? So basically a transaction goes into the pool, miners grab it, do the transaction, put it onto the block, update the ledger, and your transaction goes through and everybody's wallets update. Pretty simple on how it works. Now it gets complicated in the infrastructure of it, but that's ultimately what it does. These particular miners will grab a hold of those transactions, scan all the wallets, and reject a bunch of the wallets, saying, I'm not doing that transaction, because that one's tied to, whatever nefarious organization. So it's like, okay, well, let's take this a little bit step beyond that, because now can it just accept wallets? Like, maybe not so much like reject particular wallets, but will only accept wallets that are, say, on a registration. Like the government will, these miners will only process government registered wallets. Like you have to let the government know about your wallet and this belongs to you so that they can track all the transactions you've ever done, or else this miner is not going to do your transactions. This is not going to accept your wallet. You see where I'm getting at on that? It can get kind of like, it's hard to wrap your head around if you're not quite familiar with how Bitcoin works. But this is kind of what it's leading to, it seems like. Now, I got to thinking about that for a little bit, and I'm like, okay, so you walk into a store, and unless your wallet is on this register, that store won't do your transaction. So you might be able to do a private transaction because there's still going to be miners out there who are willing to do the transaction, not reject your wallet. But if you go to the store and you want to do a transaction with them and your wallet's not part of their government registered transaction, they're not going to sell to you. I mean, this isn't, this is my imagination going, but this is kind of what I see going down. So all the time that Bitcoin has been deemed like this anonymous thing, it's not. All the transactions that have ever occurred on the Bitcoin ledger is there to be seen. And if they can figure out it's your wallet, they'll be able to figure out every transaction you've ever done with Bitcoin. And every transaction that those people have done and every transaction that they have done. There are ways to work around it. There are secondary layers like the Lightning Network where you can upload Bitcoin up to a secondary layer and then from there be able to hide the transactions. There's ways of going about this, but if you have these mining pools that are disregarding particular wallets, then you have censorship. And then I got to thinking about it a little deeper. It was just like, okay, so if these miners can disregard particular wallets, can they also, say, charge taxes? I mean, miners can already charge fees, but can they also charge taxes? And so, if you're doing, particular, maybe, sales, like sales tax or income tax if you're getting paid. And these mining pools can immediately, before the transaction even comes to you, before the money even gets to your wallet, they can take it out. You know, I was reading a bunch of articles. It is obvious that there is a central bank digital currency coming to our future. All the banks are talking about it. And I found some articles from the central banks, or talking about the central banks implementing these digital currencies and not really caring so much about what happens with the lower banks, like the, you know, your small town banks. Like, won't have any need for them anymore. It's hard to wrap your head around this stuff, you know, and once you start letting your mind kind of, you know, because there's no set in this future, you know, there's no way of telling what's going to come from this. I mean, you can let your imagination roll and you might be right. Anyway, thought it was an interesting topic. Share that one with you guys this morning. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.